So the past few classes, we discussed at length many crucial, essential aspects of bug checking as well. We educated as much as possible on identifying bugs, how they look like, and their colors and shapes and all that. Today we prepared a hands-on video which is going to show the process of actually checking for bugs in your kitchen. In this video we included both the Schmata method as well as the leaf-by-leaf method. It is important, again, to watch the previous classes if someone did not, in order to be familiar with the bugs and everything else that was discussed over there. We will now be beginning the video. It's a 17-minute video, so this will be majority of the class.
Welcome to the hands-on bug checking class, which will be discussing the Schmata as well as the leaf-by-leaf method. Before we begin, a quick introduction. It's important, as we have discussed in the classes, to make sure that we are fluent with the Let's Scrub method. You could watch previous classes to understand that in detail. Very briefly, Let's, L-E-T-S. L stands for lighting. Make sure you have strong lighting, whether it's overhead lighting or if you'll have behind you or wherever a light box, you want to have proper lighting. E, you want to make sure you're educated, because education is key to know what you're looking for, how the bugs look like, how small they are, what colors they are, and all that. Extremely important to have education before you start checking. Next is T for timing. Make sure you're not rushed. Make sure you could do it focused, patiently, because it needs all the focus possible, and patience, being rushed, will make it that you can't properly check. And the S stands for sight or seeing. Figure out what's the best way that you could see things that are very, very small. If it means removing your glasses, if it means putting on reading glasses, figure that out before you approach checking. The next thing is scrub. It's when you're identifying bugs. First thing to look out for is the S, the shape, very unique shape, which are discussed in our classes. Next is the color, which is discussed in detail in our classes. Next, by then, you should already recognize what type of bug it is, if it's an aphid or if it's a thrip, which was all discussed in our classes. And next is the U, which is unique characteristics of bugs. If you see stripes, if you see different colors and patterns. And the final thing is the B, is body shapes, if you see body parts, if you see eyeballs, arms, legs, antennas, wings. All of those are things to look out for and to be educated about, which was all discussed in detail in our classes. We will now move on to the hands-on part of this class. We'll begin by stating that this method that we're going to be discussing today is for non-organic produce, because non-organic produce generally has less bugs. Organic needs a little bit more attention, and we'll discuss that later on. And it's for generally leafy greens, herbs, and produce like lettuce and fresh herbs, cilantro, parsley, and the like. Other vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower have a different process, as well as other fruits. Let's say like strawberries could be a different process. So today is for the general classic leafy greens. And we'll begin first by discussing what's needed. We have two big bowls. These bowls could all vary by size. If you're making a big quantity or a small quantity, if you want to have something very big, you want to maybe use a bigger bowl. If you have something smaller, it could be a smaller bowl, but we're going to have two of those, as well as two colanders, two of these strainers which fit right one into the other. And what we're going to be using is the Schmata, which we're going to be sending a link where someone can get this Schmata. Follow the link, which will be found on mikvah.org/power hour. We'll discuss over there. Over there will be posted the links. We also have a vegetable wash, which we have as well included in the lists of links. And over there, we have our light box, which as well is listed with all the links. So we're going to begin by making sure that our produce has all the leaves fully separate. We don't want leaves bunched together, because if they're bunched together, they cannot be washed properly. An easy way to start that off, we can cut off the bottom, throw that out, separate all the leaves, and especially when you get to the core, they tend to be more tight together. So you separate everything, make sure everything's separate. And then it is actually recommended, if you could, when you're doing the shmata method specifically, not the leaf by leaf method. If you're doing the shmata method, it actually would be recommended, if possible, for the final use, if you're using it for a salad, to even cut it into smaller pieces. That will make the washing process easier. If you're going to be using whole leaf specifically, if you're for burgers or the like, you could leave it whole. It just makes it a bit easier to wash and more thorough washing when they're cut up to a little bit smaller. And the same thing would be if you're using cabbage or if you're using other produce and you want to already cut it up a little bit smaller. That does help the cleaning as opposed to having full leaves. So now this bowl was already full with water. You would fill the bowl with water and then add the produce to it. Only after you added the produce and the water will you add the vegetable soap. This is just for technicalities, as if you put the soap first and then fill it with water, foam will build up, suds will build up everywhere. It's going to get very messy for no reason. So once you have your water and your vegetables is when you'll be adding the vegetable soap. Now, you want to make sure that there's space. The general ratio that's good to have is about 1/3 produce, 2/3 water, so that the produce could move well, could have space and move around and not be compacted. If the produce is too compact, it will not wash properly. The next step is to add some vegetable wash. Not too much needs to be added. You could follow the instructions on the vegetable wash bottle on how much to put per amount of produce. You want to put enough, you put enough that when you agitate the water, you get little bubbles, little suds that build up on top, as well as when you feel the produce, you feel it's a little bit slippery, a little bit more slippery than when it was beforehand. Slippery does not mean that it's got to be so slippery that if you stepped on it, you would slip. No, it's just slippery that if there's a bug on there, the bug will slip off, which is nothing too significant, but a little bit slippery, and you'll feel that in the water. It'll be a little slippery. You'll see the bubbles forming. Now that you have added the soap, you want that to sit, and you want the soap to really get into every part of the leaf, every corner, every fold, and you'll mix it around a bit so the soap can get everywhere. And also, as it sits, the soap will slowly get everywhere under the legs of the bugs where they're holding on tight to the produce, and that will help ultimately the bugs fall off. And you want to have this soaking, after giving a quick mix, you want to have it soak for about 4 to 5 minutes. During this time, we'll just discuss some pointers to help you remember. We always, like I mentioned in the classes, and I always like to tell people, is when you wash your produce, think of a washing machine. First of all, you want to use a good quality vegetable wash or soap. You don't want to be using salt or vinegar. Just like when you're washing clothing, if you want it to be efficient, you're not going to be using salt and vinegar or baking soda. You're going to use a proper detergent. Same thing for washing produce. If you want it to do a good job and properly wash and get all the bugs off, use a good soap. Second of all, make sure there's ample space. It's important if you pack your clothing into a washing machine and there's no space for it to properly move around and for the water to get between everything, it will not wash. The same thing with your produce. And now that leads us to the next step. 5 minutes have passed on the timer, and we will now be doing the stage of agitation. Agitation is very important. Just like we spoke about the washing machine, when you agitate, that's what's going to get the bugs off. You want to agitate for a total of 1 minute, at least 60 seconds of agitation, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy. We're not trying to get off an intense stain. We're just trying to knock the bugs off and make them slip off. So basic agitation is enough. And again, the agitation will be easier if the produce is broken down. If it's whole leaves, they may get in the way a bit. And again, if someone's doing the shmata method and they're okay with breaking the produce down to smaller pieces, that will help as well in this process of agitation, moving things around. Once you've properly agitated the produce, the next step is you want to transfer it to a bowl of clean water, plain water without any soap added. At this point, you will lift the produce and you will shake off any excess water and put it in the bowl of clean water. This clean water is we're gonna be pouring through the cloth to test to see if we did do a good job cleaning it or if we need to go and clean it again. If someone is using organic produce, they would want to do another soap wash before doing this plain soap. So imagine this second bowl now would also have soap in it. When you're adding the vegetables, you would do again the soaking, mixing the soap in, soaking, then agitation, and then you would have the third bowl with the clean water, and that would be the clean water you're checking if you're using organic produce. Now that I have put it in the next bowl, the same thing, we're going to have some soaking time. These leaves have a little bit of soap on them from the first time since we didn't wash off the soap. So that's going to help, if there is still any bugs attached, fall off in this process. And usually this last soaking and agitating usually gets all the soap off. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, you could do a final rinse afterwards, after you've done the whole process, to get any residue off. So at this point, you're going to let it soak. This time doesn't have to be for 5 minutes, but at this time, 2 minutes of soaking is enough. And we're going to wait 2 minutes, and then we're going to filter the water through this cloth. The method of which we filter the water through the cloth is we have 2 colanders in order to sandwich this cloth. This cloth is a very specific cloth. It's not a cheesecloth. A cheesecloth does not work. A cheesecloth will let many different types of bugs come through. This cloth doesn't let anything through except for water. So any particles, whether it's sand, dirt, or anything else, and obviously bugs, and even the smallest bugs will not come through this. It will be stuck in the cloth. We're just having a cloth loose like this, it'll fall and the water won't go through properly. So we sandwich it between 2 colanders. At this point, we've soaked it for about 2 minutes. We're going to do some agitation. And once we've done agitation, we're assuming that all the bugs have fallen off and are now currently in the water. We'll now remove all the produce and put the produce in a clean bowl, which is bug-free. So if you want to use the first bowl, make sure you've rinsed it out and it's fully clean from any bugs. In this case, I'm going to put it back in the first bowl. Even though there's some water in it, we're going to be putting it back in the first bowl, as we're not using these for practical purposes. You make sure as you're taking it out that you shake, so that if any bugs are in there, they're on the water, you shake them off, that they should come into the water, because you want to make sure that you know that if this water comes out clean, the produce as well is clean. And we can only know that if we make sure that every step we do, that we make sure the bugs end up over here in the water. So we shake everything off. And then instead of having, I only did 1 head, but I could have done easily 4 or 5 heads of lettuce, or 4 heads of lettuce in this bowl. Now, instead of having to check each leaf, I'm just going to be checking this water. If someone doesn't have the shmata and doesn't have a light box, they could at this point do the leaf by leaf method, which they would go to a strong overhead light and check each one thoroughly and patiently. And remember that the bugs are very small and are camouflage, and therefore it will take time to thoroughly look at each piece on both sides. That would be the leaf by leaf method. But if you do have the shmata method, you're just checking one cloth, this cloth, and we're going to be now draining it in the sink and then checking it over the light box. So now we are going to the next step, which the next step is pouring the wash water, the final wash water that we're going to test, through the cloth. For this, you want to be extra careful that all the water goes through the cloth. You don't want it splashing, because again, this water is what's determining if our produce was clean and bug-free. And if it splashes and goes places other than the cloth, we won't know that. So one recommended method at times, if it's a heavy bowl or if it's too far away, you could bring the colander closer to you and carefully pour. And as you pour, make sure you do it slowly so no splashing happens. Afterwards, I recommend washing the bowl out because at times the bugs can stick to the wall, and we want to make sure everything is going through this. So we're going to do it again, a quick rinse, and pour that again through the colander. And at this point, we're going to be checking this cloth. And we're going to take off the top colander and give it a quick tap, just in case any bugs stuck to it. We tap it like that. We don't have to worry about the bottom colander because everything went through the cloth and the cloth is on top of it. And now we move the cloth to a light box. When it's on the light box, at times there could be debris, pieces of leaves, especially if you're using something like dill or oregano or tarragon. Could be a lot of leaves that fall off and are blocking your vision from seeing the bugs properly. So it's recommended to have a toothpick and a spray bottle just to make things easier. The spray bottle you spray will help move debris around on the light box, and the toothpick will help you delicately move things around. If you use your finger, it will mush things and you won't be able to see it. And with the toothpick, you move things around, and as discussed in the classes, some people may need at this point to remove their glasses to help them see clearer. And some people may need to put on reading glasses to be able to see clearer up close. And for some people, it may need that their contacts may have to be removed if they can't see up close with their contacts if things become too strained. But you need to find the position that's easy for your eye to see very small things up close so that you'll be able to spot them. And once you've checked the cloth and everything seems fine, then it's good to go. However, if a bug is found, you want to do, again, another wash. So one quick soap wash, soak it for 2 minutes in soap, agitate for 1 minute, put it in the clean water, and then go through the filtration through the shmata again. If 3 times in a row your shmata produces bugs, that means that the produce is highly infested and it's not recommended to go ahead and consume it. It's too infested to deal with.
Next week we're going to be discussing and covering things that are not so simple. We call it the blacklist, things that are not really realistic to check. And we'll also discuss if blending the produce will make it more lenient to consume. And that will be all discussed next week, B'ezras Hashem.